If you're looking for someone to negotiate a deal for you, why don't you call Aaron Judge? He's pretty good at it, it turns out. The Yankee slugger talking the Yankees into paying him $150 million more than what they first offered last week for a 9-year contract. Judge, the home run champ, making $40 million a year, one of the highest paid players ever in baseball. Did the Yankees really have a choice? Maybe not. Look at the team stats for last season. Judge led the team in homers, nearly twice as many as the next Yankee regular player. Highest batting average, 50 points higher than the next regular player, and the most RBI and hits as well. As far as hitting, there's Judge on the Yankees, and then maybe just everybody else. Sam Ryan with what this all means for the Yanks. I suspect it means a lot.
Yeah, for the Yankees and for Major League Baseball. You talked about Judge and the Yankees. Judge and Major League Baseball. The numbers, you talked about them, Bill. Those numbers earning him the American League MVP award this year, and now the highest average annual salary for a position player in Major League history, all while remaining in Yankee pinstripes. After a flurry of back and forth over the last 2 days, even Aaron Boone said he was concerned last night, didn't know which way it was going to go. Word broke this morning that in the end, Aaron Judge isn't going anywhere. A reported 9-year deal with the Bombers worth $360 million, as you said. The decision coming down to continuing with the team that drafted him in 2013, a team that he built his legacy with and will continue, the New York Yankees, or the team that he grew up rooting for in California, the San Francisco Giants. Even as late as 24 hours ago, the Yankees didn't know if the reigning AL MVP would be returning to the Bronx or not. There even seemed to be a buzz at the winter meetings that a deal with the Giants was all but imminent last night. Judge coming off an historic year, first tying, then breaking Roger Maris's single-season American League home run record, a record that stood for 61 years. I spoke with ESPN's Jeff Passan, who was at the winter meetings in San Diego, and said ultimately it came down to Aaron Judge wanting to remain with the New York Yankees.
I think it evolved very simply, Sam. The New York Yankees realized that they were on the verge of losing the best player to wear pinstripes since Derek Jeter, and Hal Steinbrenner stepped up and made sure that that didn't happen. And stepping up meant 9 years for a guy in his 30s. It meant $360 million, the first time a player has exceeded or at least reached $40 million in average annual value when he's a position player. They gave Aaron Judge the contract that Aaron Judge, the MVP, warranted. And when it was all said and done, ultimately the decision went down to a very simple fact. Aaron Judge wanted to be a New York Yankee.
Yeah, you say that, and that seems to be, what everyone is saying right now, and that's what it comes down to. You talk about the financials, but how much of this was the legacy? We're hearing about the C, about the captaincy. How much of this was Aaron Judge wanting to be a Yankee for a long term?
I think it certainly played a factor in it, but we can't discount the money either. Aaron Judge's desire to be a Yankee for $300 million as opposed to $360 million probably wouldn't have been quite the same. But I think all of the trappings that come along with being a New York Yankee, the fact that you're playing in the biggest and best city in the United States, the fact that you're playing at Yankee Stadium and the ghosts and the legends who have been there before, the idea that you could become one of those really, I think, plays into who his character is and who he is as a person. And loyalty is really important to Aaron Judge. And I think throughout this process, he looked at it as, I'm going to get to learn who the San Francisco Giants are. At the end, I'm going to get to learn who the San Diego Padres are. But are these organizations going to make me the person that I am with the New York Yankees, a person that I like and a life that I love? And in the end, I think that drove the decision for him. He likes who he is as a New York Yankee, and chances are he's going to end up as one for the remainder of his career.
We often hear of those mystery teams swooping in when there are big signings. And in this case today, we're hearing about the San Diego Padres, Jeff, and a reported $400 million offer. Were they ever a contender in this?
I think that because I have not confirmed the $400 million offer, but I do believe the Padres bid more than the New York Yankees offer that was eventually accepted. Listen, money talks, right? Mm-hmm. Like, money talks very loudly, and I'm sure that it got into Aaron Judge's head that I have to at least consider this, but I think it's almost like Aaron Judge has gone about seeing this as a marriage, right? And it would have been one heck of a shotgun wedding if he decided to become a San Diego Padre, and it would have been an emotional decision and something that is based on a feeling in that very moment. When Aaron Judge is a very thoughtful person, a person who takes time and who contemplates decisions and who really approaches things from a much more logical perspective than he does an emotional perspective. And because of that, I think if the Padres were in from the beginning and were willing to go to that number, they would have had a much, much better chance than they did by coming in at the end and really making a run at him.
Some of the key words there from my takeaway from that, Bill: thoughtful, legacy, loyalty. And yeah, money does talk, but there was a huge loyalty factor in this in regards to Aaron Judge.
The other thing that Jeff said that struck me is that he viewed it like a marriage. And there were times when I thought the Yankees were going to have to sleep on the couch because, you know, some of the ways that he thought they treated them were not the way that he would have liked to have been treated, including the disclosure last week of how much they were offering.
Yeah, the way he thought, or how it was revealed that he thought. So how much of that was negotiating also? He did what he needed to do. He got the offers that he earned, that he deserved from the Padres, from the Giants, but then went back to the Yankees. He wanted to remain with the New York Yankees. That's where his heart is. The legacy factor is huge when it comes to that. The fans. You asked earlier, is this a move that the Yankees needed to do? Yes, they did. But it all came down ultimately to Aaron Judge. Did he want to be here? Did he want to be a New York Yankee? You
know, we talked about it. Lee and me and you talked about it last night on the air at 11 o'clock. And we said, you know, well, it probably looks like maybe he'll go to the Giants because his family, he grew up there. His mom and dad are there.
That's the team he grew up rooting for.
Right.
When he was a little boy and he's watching baseball on TV and going to games, the Giants were his team.
Barry Bonds was his hero.
Yes.
Despite all
So a lot can be said for that, not going for the money and going back to Hal. Hal asked him reportedly, do you want to be a New York Yankee? And he said, yes. What do I need? 9 years.
I wonder
the Padres' offer was reportedly, by the way, 10 years.
And more money.
For close to 400. We're hearing different rumblings, but
in the end, though, and I don't want to, you know, but my dad says rich or poor, it's nice to have money. But, you know, $400 million over 10 years, you know, in the end, that's $40 million over, let's say, a 9-year difference. When you talk about taxes and everything else, you know, for him and that kind of money, it's sort of pocket change.
Yeah. And as Jeff Passan said, it's shotgun wedding.
Right.
If you're going to the Padres, you're learning this team. You don't have the legacy, the fan base. You're all of a sudden coming into the and the Padres are a very good team. We saw what they did to the Mets in the wild card round. So
one more question for you. Someone mentioned, you know, being a captain like Derek Jeter. He went about this by being very quiet. I mean, yes, he went public with where he was in. He was at the winter meetings and all that stuff. But he didn't say anything. He played it just like Derek, very quietly.
Didn't burn any bridges, didn't say anything, and really kept it close to the vest. Nobody knew. Like I said a little bit earlier, Aaron Boone said today, I was concerned yesterday. We didn't know which way it was going to go, so that says a lot.
Well, I think a lot of people are less concerned.
Yes.
No question about it.
All rise.
Thank you. That's it.
Yep.
Always.